This is Pinnacle Lutheran Church Sunday Bible Study. The following session was recorded Sunday, May 5th, 2013, continuing the book of Revelation.
Good morning, everyone. We're gonna blaze through everything. I have to excuse myself at 9:30. Today is Confirmation Sunday, so I will be leaving with the choir members at 9:30, and all the rest of you that are left, I'll trust you to behave yourself for the half hour between then and church. You guys will do okay. I won't have to give you the lecture I give to the confirmation kids to make sure that you're finding a place to go after. All right. This chapter, we're going to continue. We had talked last week, we're in Revelation chapter 12, and I think we had gotten through probably, at least if nothing more, a summary of what the chapter is about and is going to be about. Most specifically, we had talked about the woman and the dragon, and we remember that the woman that was talked about was not necessarily any specific woman, but the woman was a type which was always and always has been used to signify the church. Okay, so the woman is the church, obviously the bride of Christ, which we'll talk about as we get further on into the book of Revelation. But today we're going to jump into verse number 7, and then we're going to finish. We're going to be very, very zealous and try to finish in 25 minutes. I think we can do it. I pray we can finish. So we'll look here. Let's just read just so we know what's going on. Verses 7 through it'll be 17 17. 7 through 17. And then why don't I have Jeff? If you've got that, why don't you go ahead and read that?
And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and the angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "Now come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short." When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a times and a half, out of the serpent's reach. Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with a torrent. But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river and the dragon that had spewed out of its mouth. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring and those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus.
Okay. So, a couple of different things are going on here. What do you hear that's going on so far in these verses?
There's a war going on.
Okay, war in heaven. What? I thought heaven was a place of peace and cherubs and harps and all sorts of different things. When you think of heaven, when you think of heaven, does it fit in with what it is that you're seeing depicted here in this particular part of Revelation? Okay? How is it depicted here? What's happening in heaven? Or how would you what's a setting you would use to describe what heaven looks like in this part of Revelation? Battlefield, okay?
Place where Christ, God is letting know who really is in charge.
Okay, right? Getting warmer? It's like an Easter egg hunt.
The triumph of good over evil.
Triumph of good over evil. Okay, the definitive sealing of that and the definitive casting away of. What's happening here is this is where we understand that heaven is a courtroom. Who's been, and so what we see here is there's a couple of things that we have to remember. Okay, Satan, to this point, the dragon in red, the deceiver, etc., so on, has been trying to this point to kill the child. Who is the child? Christ is the child. Jesus is the child. Okay? Now we understand, of course, when we talked about it last week, Satan, of course, does not win in this endeavor. But Jesus, through many different ways, escaped the assaults of the devil, whether it was his temptation, whether it was even in the crucifixion where Satan believed that he had won the battle. And then not only that, but he went away and then rose again. And what's interesting is that this heavenly battle that we're seeing here in this courtroom happens on something that we're actually going to commemorate this coming Thursday. All of this scene, this war in heaven, happens on the day of ascension. So Christ ascends into heaven in order to what? Mrs. Randolph, and then Nancy, you had mentioned this too. Okay, to rightfully claim His throne. That's what the day of ascension is. It's the day where Christ goes into the heavenly courtroom where Satan, who is and this is the other thing, Satan is who? What's his job? What's he done so far? Deceive. He's the deceiver, right? What's the word that's used actually to describe him? There you go. He's been in front of God and he's been saying things like, and I'll use myself as an example because I'm easy. So Satan was in heaven accusing me rightly of all the things that I had ever done wrong. Every wrong thought, every wrong action, every wrong deed, everything. And he was accusing me before God. So he is the accuser. Standing before God, accusing according to the law and accusing and making a case against me and you to say these people are not worthy to be saved. Enter then Jesus. And now God the Father, of course, knows in the courtroom of heaven who He sent to. Now here's the thing. Jesus is not the accuser. Who is He? I'll give you the first word. The first letter. Yep. He's the justifier. Now remember this. Satan is making his petitions known to God. God knows that He sent the justifier. He knows that these things are happening. Okay? But what happens is that, and then you have to go back over here. In the ascension, what happens is Jesus then goes into the heavenly courtroom, rightfully claims his place, and says to Satan, as a matter of fact doesn't say, but what does he do to him? Does he stay in heaven? Can he stay in front of God, continuing to fulfill this role?
He's thrown down to the earth.
He's thrown down to the earth. That's a very, very good thing in terms of the heavenly courtroom of God, but guess what that means for us? Who's now roaming the earth? And this is what he continues to do. Right? Not happy. He knows his time is short. This is what our text says. And his job not only is deception and lies, but his job is to accuse. And sometimes it sounds like this. You're not really good enough for Jesus. Jesus knows what you did. Boy, God could never forgive you for doing that. Who's that a voice of? That guy. Because this guy doesn't say that. Jesus is not the accuser. Who is He? The justifier. And so now He stands in the heavenly courtroom of God advocating for us. You all know what the term advocate or an advocate is, right? What's an advocate? Somebody who stands up for you. Okay? A lawyer, right. Okay,
in German, I believe the word for the lawyer is Advokat. Advocate.
Oh, gotcha. I thought it was like, I forgot. Something like that. which would be appropriate for me. Yeah. So, now what we see here, and this goes back to what we talked about last week, we have to remember that for us, okay, yes, there are ramifications, and this is very important. We know in the heavenly realm, or, and I'm going to use some real fancy language here, you ready? In the kingdom of the right, theological word right there, in the kingdom of the right, the heavenly courtroom of God, we have an advocate with the Father, namely, who? Jesus. So therefore, when God sees that we're sinning, Jesus intercedes for us, and Jesus says, that sin I've died for. That person I've died for. And so when God looks down and sees me, who does he see? Does he see Adam? He sees Jesus. And what Jesus did for me. Okay? So that's the kingdom of the right. Everything's taken care of in the kingdom of the right. It happened, and everything was taken care of really throughout all the history of time, but was perfected on the day of ascension. Very important. That's coming up this Thursday. So we'll have service this coming Thursday at 7 o'clock. You're invited. We'll talk about this very thing. How many of you knew that that was what the day of ascension was? It's a great day. It's a very, very awesome day. Okay? And then over here, so down over here, now remember, Satan has been cast down. And Satan still exists in his role of the accuser in the kingdom of, are you ready for another big theological word? Okay? Kingdom of the right, heavenly kingdom. Kingdom of the left, the place that we live here on earth. Both exist at the same time. We are justified in the kingdom of the right by what Jesus has done. We are still justified in the kingdom of the left here, but here's the thing. In the kingdom of the left, and we're going to hear about this today in our sermon. Okay? I should grab water. Kingdom of the left, you see, Jesus promises us that there's going to be this. Whoops. Tribulation. Guess who's causing that tribulation? Take a wild guess. And also there are some other people that have a hand in it too. Namely, and this is what Jesus says to us today, the world. And when he says the world, he doesn't mean the globe. He means all those who are unbelievers in Jesus. And this is the thing. Now understand, when they say the world, it's basically people who don't believe that Jesus is that guy. They don't believe that Christ ascended. They don't believe that Jesus has any say and or sway in the heavenly court of heaven. I was being redundant there. And then you have another enemy that wars against us that causes this particular thing. What is it? What's the last one? Yeah, the flesh. So in other words, we've got three very distinct enemies that war against us at all times. And these are the things, and now, when Jesus talks about tribulation today, another thing that's important to understand is Jesus isn't talking about general tribulations that come to everybody. Okay? Jesus is talking about it in terms of tribulations that only come to people who are Christians. What would be an example of tribulations that would only come to Christians? Temptation to deny, right, to do wrong, to deny the Word of God, right? Very specific, because we assume that Christians have a belief that they can be tempted from. Good. What else?
Persecution.
Persecution manifested in imprisonments, in terms of martyrdoms, etc., so on. We don't see martyrdoms in the United States necessarily. In the terms of us actually having to pour our blood out. It happens differently in the United States.
The way they're taking away Christmas, Easter, I mean, they're belittling it, really.
Sure. Eradicating it, sure. Right. And then, but even looking at it and saying, the persecutions that we have, we don't necessarily have to worry about being flayed alive, as Judas Maccabeus faced in his day. We don't have to worry about being hung for confessing Christ, yet. But there are places in the world where that happens. Ours is different. What happens if you confess Christ in your workplace? Do you have a job anymore? That's persecution. It's here. The fact that we can't even be, and this is the thing, the tribulation that's talked about in our gospel lesson, the tribulation that happens here in the kingdom of the left, not only is it, diabetes and heart disease, etc., so on, and suffering and pain, etc., that's a given. But that comes to everyone. But there's special tribulations that only we get to have. And Jesus then addresses it and he says, behold, there will be tribulation and there will be tribulation in this world. But then he always finishes it in the same way that he always has, and we've seen this a lot in the book of Revelation. He claims and makes the case that something is going to happen, but he always foreshadows it with, it's going to be okay. And then he follows it in our gospel lesson with, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome. I have overcome. I have overcome. And those are the things that we continue. This is why the season of Easter is so important. This is why you'll hear me from the pulpit every week of Easter saying, He is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. Because the reality that He's won, that He has overcome the world, that He's overcome the flesh, and that He's overcome the accuser is true today, just the same as what it has always been. Okay? So, going back into the text. So Satan doesn't accomplish his goal of taking down the child. So then look what happens in verse 13. So then because he can't take care of Jesus, the child, who does his attention turn to? Okay, the mother. Or the woman. And remember, what does the woman stand for? The church. Not to lessen the blow any, but going back to what Mrs. Randolph had said. Should we expect any different that people would be trying to get rid of Christmas? Jesus says it exactly right here. We're right on schedule. There's no great cheer that comes with that, but this is the reality of what Christ says is going to be the case and what John says in the book of Revelation. And not only that, but then he says the church is going to be affected, but then not only that, what else does it say about the offspring? Who are the offspring? What does the text say? Be after 13.
Those who obey God's command.
Okay? Those who obey God's commands are going to be the object of the accuser's assaults. How long will this last? Till the end. Here's a real fancy theological word. Y'all ready? The eschaton. The last day. Until the eschaton. So the tribulations are going to continue there, but then as John has done throughout all of Revelation, as God has continued to do, what has He reminded us? The tribulations are going to be there. Okay? But now, so we look at this and we say the tribulations are affected here. And if you've gotten downtrodden about these things, what have we forgotten? Both are true. And not only that, but what have we forgotten here in the kingdom of the left? Jesus is still that guy in the kingdom of the left. And although Satan works against the woman and or the church and or the offspring, what are the things that we have left to guard us and protect us from Satan's assaults with regard to the offspring? If Satan is the accuser, what's the most effective tool that we have against Satan? If he's the accuser. Okay, word, maybe a little bit more specifically. If he's the accuser, what is he accusing us of? So what is the most effective tool against being accused of the sin?
Avoid sin.
What's that?
Avoid sin.
Avoid sin? Come on now. That's that's the same sort of idea of like sending an Eskimo someplace and telling him not to drink beer, you know? and then a pirate ship shows up with a keg, you know? Right. I mean, it's right. But naturally, I think we're inclined to think about, well, what do we do?
Oh, well, the main thing is I would say pray and have faith.
Right? Once again, and I'm going to keep nailing you to the wall. Not what we do, okay? We're focusing a lot on what we do.
But to avoid it, we have to accept the fact that Christ is our advocate.
Okay, he's our advocate, right? But not only that, but going back to the question, what is the most effective tool, quote unquote, against sin? Not that we don't commit it. Because the fact of the matter is well, it's nice to think about it in terms of, avoiding sin, but let me ask you this question. What happens when you do? Guess who's going to be there? That guy. Saying things that are true.
Did I miss the question? Because I thought you asked, what can we do?
Did I ask what we can do?
I thought so, but I don't
No,
know.
you said what is the most effective tool.
Yeah, I was going to say we could check the tape, but I don't know how to work this thing.
I guess I don't.
Yeah. So, what is the most effective tool against sin?
Ask for forgiveness.
Ah! Okay, yes, it's nice to think that we can avoid sin. And yes, most of the time, as Christians and knowing the law and knowing what's been done, yes, we can avoid sin. I know that it's wrong to steal. I know that it's wrong to murder. I know that it's wrong to do these things. Paul knew about this in Romans 7. He says, I know what I'm not supposed to do, but what does he say? But I don't have the ability to carry it out. That which I don't want to do is what I find myself doing. And then he asks the question as he goes throughout. He says, who shall save me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ my Lord, who has won for me salvation through the forgiveness So here's the thing, and that's what the beauty of justification is. It doesn't say, well, because you're justified, that means you'll sin less. I don't even know what that looks like. I don't. I know there are religions that teach that.
In fact, at one point, one of the religions said the more you sin, the more glory there is.
Well, yeah, that was directly right. Sin, yeah. So you look at it and say, the most effective tool against sin is the forgiveness of sin. Because Jesus looks at it and says, you look at it and you say, okay, for example, corporate confession. Corporate confession happens at the beginning of every divine service. Okay, we do it all the time. And a lot of people say, well, it's just so rote and there's no feeling behind it and this, that, and the other. Well, does there need to be feeling behind it in order for you to confess who it is that you truly are? Okay, what confessing your sins do really says, you know what, I'm going to beat you to the punch. Luther once wrote, he said, one of the strongest tools that he ever found to use against the accuser is that when Satan would accuse him of something, Luther would bring up all the other things that Satan had forgot. For example, Luther, you stole that loaf of bread from that old woman, and he'd have this thought in his mind, and then he's like, Satan, but you've forgotten. I've also stolen from this peasant, and I've also thought this, that about the other thing, and this, that, and the other thing, and then he would say, and I am baptized and forgiven for those sins. Be gone with you, and then he would say something else that followed in order to scare the devil away. You know how it goes?
Luther stole from peasants.
What's that? I'm using it as an example. But what did Luther ultimately do to scare the devil away? Go ahead, Andrew, you know this. He cut some cheese, broke wind. It wasn't the breaking of wind, obviously, that scared the devil away. It was reminding him, but Luther says that for emphasis, is to say it's just very simple. Agree with him. You're right, I am. I am a sinner. And not only that, but I've done this, and this. And all of those things this guy has died for. I am justified and I have received this by virtue of Christ's death. I am baptized. That's how I know that I've received these things definitively. It has been traced upon my forehead and upon my heart. Signed, sealed, and delivered. Be gone with you. I love it. It is that simple. I've seen this work. I'll tell you one story, and then I've got to go with the confirmation kids. There was one night, Melissa and I were in bed, and this Knox was young. And he wasn't sleeping, and this night he was sleeping fairly well. It was about 11 o'clock. And Melissa and I were just laying in bed. And I get this feeling, this pressing on my body. And I'm like, something's not right. And then, you normally have white noises in the house, etc., so on. And there wasn't. There was no white noise at all. Nothing. Sound. It was soundless. And then this overwhelming sense of pressure that's coming up the stairs to come into the room. Now, Melissa and I aren't talking at all. We're not saying anything. We're not making any contact with each other. And Melissa then leans over to me and she touches me and she says, "Do you feel that?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And she explained the exact same thing that I just explained to you. Immediately, exactly what I just explained to you happened. We know you're here. We know what you're here for. We know what it is that we've done. In further, we know all these things in which we've done. But you know what? We have not forgotten, nor will we not trust in this man who is this. Be gone from here. You are not welcome. We have been forgiven of our sins, and we are baptized. Gone. Immediately. And it's not to say this happens, as to verify it, but just the idea that, that works. To understand that is what full reliance upon Jesus looks like. In certain ways. There's many ways that it looks like, that it looks like. But the fact is that this guy, we know where he exists now. He exists down here in the kingdom of the left, down here on the temporal plane. We know what his job is. We know what he's going to do. And you know what? Luther then says, help him with his job. Accuse yourself. Don't withhold your sins. Because if you keep them to yourself, guess who's going to continue to press the button, turn the knife, turn the screws. This is what keeps people out of churches. I couldn't possibly come back into church. I have to rectify and do these things. The church would fall down on me. The accuser keeps people away. Why? Because he knows that faith comes, as Paul says, through hearing. The accuser keeps people away from church. Because he knows what's there in the church. And he doesn't want you to have it. And so that's why we always insist that it's always the same. Every week. This. Every week, the forgiveness of sins given through the means of the Word and the sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper. Repeat. Because going back to, this guy exists. And that's his job. And he does a great job of it. And his job is to only make us believe that this doesn't exist for us. And this is what the text says, and just real quickly, what the text says about this is it says, how long will the woman be sustained? There's that number again, isn't it? For the 1260 days. In other words, the 3.5 years. In other words, from the ascension to the eschaton. And that's the thing that we're behooved to remember. There's a lot in Revelation 12. Revelation is I can't tell you how many times this year I've looked at Revelation in light of all the things that are happening around us, and I thought, wow, okay, we're right on schedule, I guess. And in the midst of it, Christ is still here taking care of us. Very, very simply. By His Word and by His sacraments. I love how simple it is.